much. Meanwhile, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia announcing a new security partnership this week. It is aimed at strengthening Australia's military might as its relationship deteriorates further with China. Tensions in the Indo-Pacific are certainly rising. China flexing power to Taiwan. The country's defense minister says it intercepted a fleet of 9 Chinese warplanes yesterday in Taiwan airspace. Is this a bullying move? Is this something more? Joining me right now is DC International Advisory CEO, former Radio Free Asia president, and the former Deputy National Security Advisor for Dick Cheney, Stephen Yates, is here. Stephen, your thoughts when I saw that headline that China was entering Taiwan space yesterday. I thought it would be a bigger deal than it was. What's your take on what took place?
Well, it is a big deal. China has been pushing the limits of where the center line used to be in the Taiwan Strait. It was somewhat of an informal agreement that aircraft and sea vessels could come close to each other and send hand signals to one another and go back to their home bases, sending their strategic messages. This has increased in frequency, increased in capability, and been increasingly aggressive in terms of geography. So this is definitely a bullying move, and the political warfare parts of China's government have been talking this up, suggesting that more is to come in this regard.
Yeah, it's, I guess, not unexpected given the weakness that we are seeing coming out of the United States, right? I mean, if China wants to make a move on Taiwan, they want to do it when they expect the U.S. is either, overwhelmed with other issues or that the U.S. perhaps won't get involved. Do you think that the timing of this is because of that reason, weakness in the United States?
They've certainly seen somewhat of a go signal from the debacle that has unfolded coming out of the Middle East. The United States government seems very, very distracted and in some ways incompetent. And there's now increased doubt about who exactly is in charge of our armed forces and the chain of command. All of this just sows division, which just bring grins to the CCP.
Meanwhile, the CCP continues its incredible behavior, subsidizing companies, disappearing people. There are concerns mounting after Beijing told major banks that its second largest property developer, Evergrande, will not be able to pay any interest payments beginning next week. The company's local bond trading suspended today after prices fell. Asian stocks have been impacted on the CCP's continued crackdown. And I just want to say that there are real implications in the United States as well for this Evergrande story. This is a list of the top mutual fund holders of Evergrande: Vanguard International Stock Index, Vanguard International Stock Index Total, Emerging Markets Vanguard, DFA Emerging Markets Core Equity Portfolio, Vanguard Global. All of these mutual funds hold Evergrande. Are you expecting a big impact from this China property giant admitting about this debt crisis is underway? By the way, there are protesters besieging the headquarters of Evergrande right now. And of course, this all as the crackdown from Beijing continues. The gaming sector still feeling the pressure. Shares of Macau casino operators down as much as a third of their value yesterday. And the sell-off is continuing this morning. With the Wynn Resorts, Las Vegas Sands, and MGM down 1.5% to 3% right now, Stephen.
Yeah, well, I think that we have focused appropriately on a lot of what China's been doing with wolf warriors, some of its military aggression externally. But what that does is it draws attention away from some profound problems inside of China, which may explain to some degree the aggression that we see on the outside. This is a major, major test of China's financial system. The whole question of is something too big to fail in China is something that has never really been answered to this point. It also shows what a lot of us, including this program, have been warning about, that a lot of our financial investors in the United States, ranging from teachers' pensions to municipal bonds to a whole host of other instruments, have massive exposure in a system that abides by none of the standards that we require in our own market. So that imbalance puts an unnecessary risk out into our market, not just theirs.
Yeah, I was talking with a source yesterday, and China's real estate market obviously has become bigger and bigger part of its overall GDP. The real estate has been a driver of the economy. It rose from 5% of GDP in 1995 to more than 13% in 2019, of which 70% is devoted to residential building. The point is that this is going to have an impact on the Chinese economy and likely the entire world's economy. Real quick, before I move on, China's biggest movie star was erased from the internet. We are still trying to understand why Zhao Wei spent so much time as sort of the Reese Witherspoon of China, is how the Wall Street Journal explains who she is. She directed award-winning films. She sold records, pop singer, built a large following. But maybe the biggest mistake she made was investing in Jack Ma and investing in Jack Ma's Alibaba. She's been disappeared from the internet. You can't even go to her fan page and see anything about her. It's completely blank. We don't know what she did, but the CCP is doing what the CCP does and just disappearing people if they are not in line with CCP rules. Your thoughts?
No, it's quite remarkable. I mean, a lot of us who have studied the CCP for many, many years, you know that this is, at its core, an evil organization. And yet, people can make a lot of money for a period of time as long as you're in their good graces. But you fly too close to the sun and your wax wings will melt quickly. And so whether you are gaming in Macau or investing in real estate in China, or your entertainment or tech or moving supply chains out of China, all of this is great money until the CCP says you're done. And the curtain comes down very quickly without warning.
And that's what happened to Jack Ma. He was gone for 3 months. Nobody saw him, heard from him at all. We don't even know his whereabouts right now. Stephen, before you go, real quick on this Afghanistan mess and General Milley and this phone call that he had with his counterparts in China, are we going to see any accountability for all of these missteps? What do you think about Milley and about the Afghanistan withdrawal?
Well, I think the policy direction of ending the war in Afghanistan is correct. And I think that many, many people have made the point it's the way it's been done that is profoundly bad and dangerous. Somewhat similar with these phone calls. The fact of a phone call between a top American official in the military or otherwise is not really the issue, but how this was done comes dangerously close to treason if it doesn't cross the line. In my experience, it's extremely unusual for any advisor to the President of the United States to be engaging their counterparts on something as sensitive as this without the President knowing before, during, and after. So this workaround to shield out the rest of the national security, top leadership, and the President goes completely contrary to what the role and mission is for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I don't think he should have had the job to begin with. That was a problem of personnel before, but his actions, I think, are treasonous, are inappropriate, and they send the wrong signal to China. No one in their right mind thought Donald Trump was about to attack China. Why take that bait? Why engage in this charade?
It's unbelievable. And the biggest misstep, in my view, is Bagram Air Base, because China wants to move right in into this strategically located air base. We have lost our eyes and ears in that part of the world. We are completely dark, which is incredibly dangerous. Stephen, thanks very much. We will continue following all of this.